I was lucky enough to get invited to Treyarch Studios very recently to play Black Ops 6 Zombies early, so I got hands-on with the game, I got to play BO6, and I want to tell you guys a lot about everything Zombies has to offer. I wanted to make this video today to put everything consolidated and very concise into one video, because there's a lot of information out there now, and from everything that we played and got our hands on with, there's a ton to break down just within that stuff already. So what I'm going to do is give you guys a bit of impressions of what I played, and also explain how the game works, the new systems, how Easter eggs work, etc. I'm just gonna break down every single system I know. Now, I will say the gameplay you're watching is Black Ops 6 gameplay. However, this is not my personal footage. Just so we're clear on that, this is footage that they gave us in order to use. This is the map we played, though. This is Terminus you're seeing, and so I'm gonna use the footage they gave us to illustrate this as best as possible. But for the most part, I'm just gonna let you guys watch and enjoy the gameplay in the background. Now, let's step back a little bit and set the stage. Let's talk about story and the setup and premise of this map. Terminus takes place directly after the last events of Cold War in Forsaken. You know, when Dr. Peck is pointing at an island, he says, "We're going here." He shows up at the beginning of this map in order to rescue the crew from Requiem that got arrested in that final cutscene. Also, there is a brand new character named Maya Aguinaldo. She's here, and she's here not to rescue Terminus, but to rescue her brother, which we don't know a whole lot about yet. But these are the characters that are going to be present. Strauss is also around, but he's just going to be a support character narrating more in the field. He's not going to be actually a playable character right now. And then also Raptor 1 is here as well in order to, you know, exfil us and extract and all that stuff. Now, the big reveal at the end of Cold War Zombies was Project Janus, and we now know that Richtofen was the director. Dr. Peck has direct beef with Richtofen, and so that's kind of the setup of why Dr. Peck is here. They want to kill Richtofen, and that's why we're at this island, and where that goes from here, we'll have to wait and see. So that's kind of the story setup of this map. Now, let's move into gameplay. Now, I know a lot of you guys are going to be excited to hear this. When we were at Treyarch, they told us during the presentation their inspirations for making this mode were Black Ops Cold War Zombies and Black Ops 3. That is the fundamental core of what this game is trying to accomplish, as well as bringing new things into the fold. And so you can kind of think of them using those two games as their foundation and structure, but building on top of that. That's really the games that they pulled the most ideas from. But what does that actually mean, though? Where do these inspirations take place in the game? So let's start with some Cold War stuff. When you play Black Ops 6, you're going to notice something very familiar from Cold War is that the loadout weapon system returns, meaning you can spawn in with any weapon you want. You can pick anything out of the arsenal, and that means the rarity system will also be present in the game, and it works exactly how it did in Cold War. You have like your starting weapon, which is like the base rarity, and then you have green, blue, purple, and legendary, and then you have, of course, a different category for wonder weapons. However, you know, the same process more or less exists in weapon rarity that affects the mystery box, wall weapons, etc. If you're used to that game, then you'll understand how the weapons in this work. Now, there is a little bit of a change because they took inspiration from weapon kits in Black Ops 3 and introduced that into BO6. So what this means is that for every weapon in the game, you're going to have what's called a zombie build, and this is a, you know, version of your gun that's specifically made for this mode that you can tailor and customize to your liking. And anytime you pull this weapon either out of the box or off the wall or any means acquiring this in-game, it will automatically be that version you set. So if you remember in Black Ops Cold War, you could pick up a gun, go to your blueprints, and then apply it, and you had like a zombie built that way. You kind of had to do extra steps to get it, but this is going to be more or less automatic. But the point is, loadouts are returning, and you have a more simplified weapon kits Black Ops 3 inspired version of them, which sounds really fun. And, you know, we didn't get to really mess around with any weapon kits ourselves, but that's how they'll function once you're playing it at home, and you can customize every gun in the game to your liking, so that's fun. Now, another thing from Cold War is the armor system is returning. However, it's a bit altered. You remember in Cold War, you did have armor that you needed to acquire. However, the plates in which that would restore your armor were automatically applied. You would just run over a plate and it would, you know, get applied to your bar. That's changed, and it's more like MWZ, where you need to now manually plate. And I know that might sound like a disadvantage, but I don't think it is in this case, because also one of the things that I really didn't like about Cold War was the fact that the armor system was tied to these, you know, arsenal stations, where sometimes in like D Machine there was only one station and you had to go there to, you know, refresh your armor or get a bigger vest or whatever it was, and it was pretty out of the way and a little bit annoying, and plus it costs scrap. The thing with armor now is not only do you have to manually plate, but armor vests are actually wall buys instead. So getting a bigger vest and increasing the maximum amount of plates you can carry, there are different wall buys around the map that are fairly expensive, admittedly, but they just cost essence instead of scrap. Speaking of which, scrap does return from Cold War. However, it's been relatively simplified. There's no longer like a common and rare salvage. It's literally just one type of scrap. There's one currency, and you no longer need to use that to buy armor. However, you can buy other things with this, such as, stuff from the arsenal in order to upgrade the rarity of your gun, or you can also buy stuff from the crafting table, and there's some really cool stuff there, which we'll get to in a second. Now, since armor and their vests have been taken out of the arsenal, which was typical in Cold War, what got replaced there? So something with the Pack-a-Punch to know is that it functions almost identical to how it does in Cold War. You've got your Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 Pack-a-Punches respectively, and you'll remember in Cold War you could also upgrade and apply an alternate ammo type to your weapon. That is no longer the case. You can still Pack-a-Punch, obviously, but alternate ammo types have been moved over to the arsenal, where you also upgrade the rarity of your weapon. You can do either of those there. While we're on the topic of alternate ammo types, there's been a new one added called Shadow Rift, and this is a very good crowd-controlled AAT. I was using this a lot when I was playing, and it's great. It's like a Gersh device effect, and this also, there are different enemies in the game that are particularly weak to the shadow element, and so, these kind of bullets will be more effective against them, and so that's just another one added to the mix. Everything from Cold War, as far as alternate ammo types, do come over here with one brand new one. Now, let's talk about field upgrades and perks, because there's a very game-changing system that we need to talk about. You'll remember in Black Ops Cold War that there was an entire system with these like Ethereum crystals where you would go through your perks, your weapons, etc., and upgrade them through these trees. And that's not really the case anymore. This system has evolved into what are now called augments, and you can think of these as essentially like a small buff or a different condition to your perk and or field upgrade. So for example, with Juggernog, you have the ability to apply one major and one minor augment. Let's say a major augment maybe like increases your health regeneration speed, and a minor augment would just maybe slightly increase the health stat that you have, maybe bump it up by 5 or 10 points or something like that. Basically, one big change and one little change for each perk and each field upgrade. You're not limited to one augment, period. Like every single perk you have can have an augment, minor and major, as well as your field upgrade. So this zombie seems to really be about build crafting, and the way that you unlock these augments is simply by playing the game, which I think is pretty nice. That was kind of like how you got the Ethereum crystals as well in some sense, but you just play the game, get XP, and let's say you want to upgrade your speed cola augments and unlock those. You just select that path before the game starts, you start going in, killing zombies, playing the game, and then you'll make progress through that. And then whenever you're back at the main menu, for every perk and equipment that are available, you can change the minor and major augments to try to make like your personal favorite build, right? And I think this really gets into the whole idea of build crafting, trying to find a role. You can play like a big medic, you can play an assault like damage dealer, archetype. They're not like hard locked roles that you're into, but you can basically craft it in a way where that's what your specialty is. And I think it's a system with a lot of depth, and I think should be very interesting. I will say we didn't get to personally play with the augments, so I'm not entirely sure how depthful the system is, but it seems like they put a lot of heart and soul and work into this system specifically, and I think this is kind of the bread and butter of the gameplay loop. So we'll have to wait and figure it out once the game releases and we can play it at home. But anyways, let's move on to talk about a system from Black Ops 3 returning, and probably the best news we could have had. Gobblegum are indeed back, and I can tell you exactly how they work. First of all, this is no longer Dr. Monty's Gobblegum machine, but Mr. Peak's, and it's been updated to some degree. So the way it works is similar, however, a couple of key changes. Now, you can select 5 different Gobblegums to bring into a match. That's obviously the same. However, you can now hold up to 3 different Gobblegum at the same time, and the UI looks just like the MP killstreak system, right? Like they'll be on the right side, and you can sort of pick and choose which one, but you can hold 3 at once, which was never the case in Black Ops 3. You were restricted to 1 at a time, and the Gobblegums that are returning, a lot of them are from Black Ops 3, and some from elixirs that were in Cold War, as well as some brand new ones. But stuff like Respin Cycle, Perkaholic, Shields Up, Temporal Gift, stuff like that are going to be returning. And also, you might be wondering, okay, well, we had the Liquid Divinium system in Black Ops 3, and then we had the Nebulium Plasma in Black Ops 4. Essentially, you needed a currency to roll for a thing, which would then give you a Gobblegum. So what do you need to actually acquire Gobblegum in Black Ops 6? Well, the good news is nothing. You actually just play the game. Every time a round passes, you have a small chance to earn a Gobblegum. This immediately gets sent back to your like inventory or to your account, and then the next game it'll be available. So every time you pass around, maybe if you're even in like high rounds, you have the chance to get maybe 1 or even 2 Gobblegums at once. I don't know the rate of this. Like, I'm not sure how many gums you're going to be earning per game. I really don't know. But just everything we were told, there's a small chance that every time a round passes, you could be given a Gobblegum. But basically, no more spinning for stuff. You're just going to get them from playing the game, which is really nice. One thing to note is the color system has been simplified. You remember in Black Ops 3, the way the colors and the patterns on the gum were always meant something. To give a quick rundown, like purple were activation-based gums, blue were round-based, green were time-based, and orange were a condition. They've simplified this a lot to where now you just have either something that is activation-based, or you have a time-based Gobblegum, or you have a conditional Gobblegum. That's it. There's only 3 types now. So for example, anywhere but here would be activation based. You click it and then the effect applies. Or temporal gift, for example, would be a time-based Gobblegum. You activate this and over a certain period of time, its effect will, be in the game. And then the final one is a condition. Let's take respin cycle. This will activate whenever you do a thing that it activates, obviously. Respin cycle, by the way, has been buffed in this game to where now it will re-roll the mystery box, but it also guarantees a higher rarity of that weapon as well. So respin cycle, unironically, probably pretty good in this game now. We talked a little bit about them earlier, but when it comes to field upgrades, all of the ones from Cold War are returning, and there's a brand new one called Dark Flare. This is a multi-use field upgrade that can either be used for like offensive capabilities where it just fires this giant concentrated beam of, Shadow Rift energy, or you can kind of turn it into like a gravity ball that floats and then explodes in a certain area. So this one is a very versatile kind of field upgrade, and it obviously does, shadow damage, so you can pair it with the alternate ammo type. And for enemies that are weak to that, this will probably be very effective. I guess this can also kind of heal your teammates too. I didn't get to use this in game, but that's what people were saying. Now we've got a big hot button issue to discuss, but before we get to that, I want to quickly talk about the new movement in zombies. Obviously, Black Ops 6 has a new system of Omni movement, and I was worried that this might not work so well for zombies. However, I'm happy to report that I genuinely loved it. It was probably one of the best, attributes to this game or features that really separate Black Ops 6 and make it feel like its own. I found myself using this a ton because it was nice to be able to check corners or even briefly check behind you without having to lose your momentum. Obviously in zombies it's very risky to either turn backwards or walk backwards if you don't know what's there. I actually found the Omni movement to be quite useful. My only issue was that in the later rounds I was shooting my weapon so much that I almost never had time to take advantage of the Omni movement because I was either tack sprinting forward or shooting my gun. And as far as I can tell, you're not able to sprint and shoot at the moment, but maybe they'll change that. And if you could sprint and shoot in any direction, then I think it would make this game feel absolutely so fluid, and I'm sure they'll end up doing something like that at one point or another. But basically, the movement in zombies felt really nice. And I'm a big movement guy. Personally, that's something that's very important to me in how a game feels and if I enjoy it. And so I'm happy to report that the movement in Black Ops 6 Zombies is pretty excellent. Now, let's talk about a pretty big change that are coming to main Easter eggs and their design. This is a pretty big issue, and so this is essentially what they're going to be doing going forward. Every Zombies map is going to have a main Easter egg and tons of side ones. Terminus, from what we've been told, has some of the most side Easter eggs of any Zombies map ever, evidently, but the main Easter egg is getting some changes into how it functions. So essentially, you have what is called standard mode, which is when the map comes out, for a couple of weeks most likely, it's just going to be that. You're going to have to figure out how to do the main Easter egg on your own. There's going to be no hints or guides or anything like that. You just got to figure it out. And the main Easter eggs are apparently a little bit harder than they were in Cold War, at least. So they've tried to turn up the difficulty from then. But after a couple of weeks, maybe in some kind of update, they're going to release a guided mode for the map, which just basically walks you through the main Easter egg to a point where, you get objective markers. It'll tell you what to do, step-by-step instructions, and it'll take you through the entire main quest. However, this guided mode is only for the main Easter egg, and it disables any side Easter eggs in the map. So if you want to do any of that stuff, you're going to have to make sure that you're playing in standard mode, in which there are no hints. This is only for people who are attempting to do the main Easter egg. Now, they haven't said exactly when this guided mode comes out for a map, but I would expect probably a new map would come out, and for a few weeks it will only be in standard. And you might be wondering, okay, what's the reason to want to do it in standard and not just wait for guided? If you do the Easter egg in standard mode before the guided guided mode even releases, you're going to be given exclusive rewards. Now, they haven't told us what those are yet, but apparently they're pretty nice stuff. They call them very durable rewards, but whatever it is, there's going to be some pretty substantial rewards that you'll be given if you complete the Easter egg before guided mode comes out. But for people who've like never done a main quest before, you wait long enough, eventually you'll be able to play a mode that pretty much just more or less walks you through it. But for more hardcore players and Easter egg hunters, this is still going to be the classic formula. You're going to have to discover the Easter egg on your own. I think this is their way of trying to satisfy both communities, giving the hardcore players what they want, and then also introducing the idea of Easter eggs and main quests to new players. I believe that's their angle. A couple of new things I want to discuss are enemy types, wonder weapons that are coming, and stuff like that, and even a brand new perk. So I told you a little bit about perks and their augments and everything, but we didn't really talk about the actual selection. All of the perks except Mule Kick from Cold War were there. I don't know where Mule Kick is or if it's coming to the game. I'm not sure about that, but there was a brand new perk called Melee Macchiato. This essentially gives your dedicated melee weapon extra damage, or I guess any sort of melee. You do also have a dedicated melee function in this game, which, you know, I guess should be for like early rounds and stuff like that, but this will increase the damage of all melee output, which is very nice. I'm not sure how this can be augmented either. Like, I don't really know where that's going to go, but the new perk is pretty cool. I didn't get to use it a ton, but it seemed pretty nice. There is a new wonder weapon called the Beam Smasher, and this is interesting. Now, the ray gun obviously is going to be in the game. That's a wonder weapon that has been a staple from day one, and it gets some new sort of like animations and new additions here, but it's basically the classic ray gun that we all love. However, the Beam Smasher is a brand new one, and this has a couple functions. It obviously fires this really powerful electric bolt, and this feels like the DIE version in D Machine of you know, the electric variants of that, and it's similar. However, this also has an alternate fire function where it can essentially like slow down zombies and make them more vulnerable to all incoming damage. So you can kind of like debuff them. It almost feels like EMPing zombies in a way back in like Black Ops 2. And then also, when this weapon gets empty and you reload, you get this giant shockwave blast around you that just annihilates zombies. This wonder weapon is fantastic. I didn't get to use it, but somebody else in my game had it, and it was unbelievable. Of course, there's going to be brand new wonder weapons as new maps come out, but this appears to be the one that's most prominently featured on Terminus, and I think y'all will really like playing with this one. Now, let's talk a little bit about enemy types. There are a few different ones that are featured in the game, right? You even have like different size enemies, but you have this new interesting mechanic called vermin, and you can see them right here. Every time you kill a zombie, or you know, every so often, basically this kind of like skinny creature is going to come out of it, and this is what's called a vermin. If you don't kill this quickly, this has the chance to essentially evolve into a buffed up like flying parasite, and this will become incredibly strong. It can now hit you from range. Basically, you want to kill these vermin before they evolve and let them get out of hand, so it's very important to lock these down. Manglers from Gorod Krovi also return, and what's crazy is that in the crafting table, there is like this Mangler serum item that you can use and literally become a Mangler for a small period of time. It's pretty crazy. Now, I will say this is one of the most expensive items in the crafting table menu, so definitely make sure to save up for this one because it looks pretty wild. Like, it's essentially a Juggernaut suit from MWZ in a way. Now, speaking of the crafting table, a really big change coming to Zombies gameplay, you'll remember that you could essentially almost infinitely buy self-revives in Cold War, right? As long as you had enough scrap, if you keep going down in solo, as long as you have enough scrap, you can keep yourself alive indefinitely. However, you are now hard capped at 3 self-revives per game period. That includes solo and co-op. So they've really put a limit on what you can do as far as how many times you revive yourself, which I think is a fantastic change. I am so happy they made this because it will increase the emphasis on, you know, what high rounds are for, and it'll make high rounds a lot more impressive. Oh, also, speaking of high rounds, for the first time in Zombies history, Treyarch is allowing us to use a save and quit function for a Zombies game. Now, there are some particulars to this, like, for example, you cannot save your game if you're not at full health, so you're not able to kind of like, you know, pause the game and save it right before you die and stuff like that to abuse it, but you are actually able to, let's say if you're doing a high round run, you can save and quit and then come back later. You can also save a map and then play a different map and come back to your original game. However, there is only one save slot, so you cannot have multiple saves for multiple maps going at a time. It's one save slot period, and you can use this to maintain a game if you're doing an Easter egg or a high round or something like that. But the save and quit function is the first time we've ever had something like that in Zombies, and they're going to be introducing it here with Black Ops 6. This is one of the many quality of life changes they're making to Black Ops 6 Zombies, including the ability in co-op now, you're going to get individual like scrap drops in armor and stuff like that. So in co-op games, there won't be people that are just hogging all the scrap and grabbing your armor and stuff. They will be individual drops only for you, so you're not stealing each other's resources. So it's little stuff like that. There's a plethora of quality of life changes. We're not going to go through every single individual one, but more or less, they're all an evolution of a Cold War system or heavily inspired from Black Ops 3. And I would say that is probably the best way to describe how this game feels. From a gameplay perspective, it feels the most similar to Cold War Zombies. Of course, the gameplay you're watching this whole time has had no HUD, but in the game there is a HUD. The sort of like a player health bar, it looks a lot like MWZ, whereas the perk icons and where they're placed feel a lot like Cold War. So it's a bit of a blend of those things, but a lot of the systems from Black Ops 3 clearly inspire much of what this game is doing. Another thing similar to Black Ops 3 is the progression system. No more seasonal ranks. Obviously, with the release of Black Ops 6, one of their selling points has been Classic Prestige returning. Now, there is cross progression, meaning you can play multiplayer, you can play zombies, and that will all attribute to your rank, but now we have a full cross progression system in which the Classic Prestige is still in effect for zombies. So that's kind of the best of both worlds as far as I'm concerned. It's really nice to have a Classic Prestige system back in zombies, although admittedly, I do wish there was a little bit of like the skill ranking system that we saw in something like BO2, but at the moment, I don't believe there's anything with that going on for Black Ops 6. Now, getting away from specific details for just a second, I want to talk about my more broad general gameplay impressions. Like I said, we only played Terminus. I've not played Liberty Falls or anything, and so I don't know how that map's going to be, but Terminus I had a ton of fun with. I will say that I always felt like Cold War had a great gameplay foundation. That's one of my favorite zombies games, and I always said that I would love if they were able to take the systems of Cold War and maybe tune up the difficulty just a little bit, make the Easter eggs slightly harder, etc. And it seems like that's exactly what they're doing. Guided mode aside, it looks like the Easter eggs are going to be more tough, even though they're using a lot of the fundamental systems that Cold War had introduced, and a lot of the Easter egg steps probably are going to be like, you know, more logic-based to how they were in Cold War. But all in all, I honestly thoroughly enjoyed everything I played, and it just feels great to have proper round-based zombies back. I liked MWZ a lot, but it, you know, of course was this real departure, and so it was hard to compare to traditional zombies, but my god, it just feels good to have rounds again, man. Like, that's great, and I feel like they genuinely listened to a lot of community feedback. I mean, stuff that I criticized Cold War for like 3 or 4 years ago seems to have been precisely fixed in this game, and I couldn't ask for a better outcome than that. And I think a lot of people who are craving round-based zombies, and a really good one at that, if you liked Cold War, I will guarantee that you'll like this one. And if maybe you enjoyed aspects of Cold War but wanted the Easter eggs to be a little bit harder, then I honestly imagine that this will probably be for you. I do want to thank Treyarch again for giving me the opportunity to play this early and share it with you guys, because I'm just so excited to have zombies back, bro. Like, I know so many of you were just waiting on the back burner, waiting for a great round-based zombies game to come out, and it's finally arrived. I just think that the core of what this game is going to pull off, they have the potential to do some insane things, and I feel like the best is yet to come with the Black Ops 6 season. And all I can say is I enjoyed myself a lot, and I really have a good feeling that you guys will too, and I'm looking forward to sharing more as soon as I can. But I pretty much wanted just to cover all the major details of stuff you really need to know about this mode, and hopefully this gave you a very good picture of what to expect, and I kind of illustrated all the stuff that you need to be informed about. So anyways, guys, leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new for more zombies videos. There'll be plenty more, and I will see you all in the next one. Take it easy, guys, and peace out.